Hi, this is Michelle Teberge, and this is going to be a brief introduction to acrylic painting brushes. The four main sizes that you need, or shapes that you need, and what they do, how they make different brush strokes. So first thing I want to say is if you're just getting started and you're on a budget, you really got to watch what you spend. I would say reserve more money for good brushes than for the good paint. I'd prefer that you have good quality everything, but I understand when you're getting started, sometimes you're just not able to, it can get very costly just getting started with acrylic painting. My experience is from teaching for many years is if you have poor quality brushes, it's much more frustrating than if you don't have the perfect, higher quality, high pigment colors. So you can, I would just invest in good brushes, take really good care of them, and they can last a really long time. So the other thing I wanted to say, I'm going to show you different sizes. I would say a starter kit would be one of each type of the brushes I'm going to show you, and I'll talk about what sizes to get of each one. And lastly, what's the difference between oil brushes versus acrylic brushes? So when you go to your local art supply shop, you're going to need to ask them specifically to point you in the direction of acrylic brushes. In general, acrylic painters use synthetic bristle brushes because they hold their shape in water. So you usually leave brushes sitting in water for quite some time while you're painting, because if you're not constantly washing and drying them, then the paint can dry in there and destroy the brush. So a natural bristle brush will get really soggy in the water and it won't hold. So let me just demonstrate. This is the snap or the spring you're looking for. You see how it bounces. This is a good quality brush. It bounces right back into its shape. And it has, you can almost hear like a little spring in there sometimes. So that's something you can do to test the brushes. I wouldn't encourage you to buy the cheap ones, the sets or whatever. It's just not even worth your money to even go there. So I would try and get the better brushes to start with. And then add to your kit as needed. This is a natural bristle brush, and you see the bristles have splayed a lot. So here's a good quality brush where the bristles are kind of holding their shape really nicely. Here's where they've splayed. That's not to say that you can't use this to get some interesting texture in a painting. It just won't be able to control it too easily or draw a line. The other thing is well, this has pretty good snap. Pretty good snap, not too bad, but the bristles are definitely splayed on that. So I'm going to go through each size and demonstrate them. Okay, so here are the round brushes. You'll want one of these in a smaller size. I'm going to use my pinky because sizes differ from company to company, so I can't give you a number, but this is my pinky. You want one, a half to a third, I guess, the width of your pinky, maybe even smaller. So you want to be able to draw lines with it. And I'm going to demonstrate here with this round brush how you can draw a line. It's also good for just smaller brush strokes, little textures and so forth. Because this is synthetic, it won't hold a lot of brush strokes, so some of you like that. You want the paint to apply a little smoother. In general, the stiffer and coarser the bristles, the more of an obvious brush stroke you'll have. So a round for doing lines and detail work. Now the next shape I want to show you is called flat. Now flat, it means the bristles are cut flat across the top and they're on the longer side. I'm going to show you for comparison's sake. This is a bright, and it's very similar. It's just that the bristle length is a little shorter, so it's almost the same width as length. Here you have it longer length. This is a brush I would say I personally use the least often, but depending on how you paint, you might use a lot. What I do like is that you can use it on its edge, and you can use it flat. So you can paint like this, and now you see I'm getting a little bit more texture in the brush stroke, and that might be something that you want to have happen. Again, I'm painting a little less paint and I can smooth it. You see how I got a smoother texture? So depending on how much you load up the brush, I can really load it a lot and get brush stroke, or I can use less paint and brush over it many times to get sort of a smoother application. You can also do something called dry brush, and that is creating this little veil of color with very little paint on it. That is, the paint on the brush is nearly dry. So another thing is, if you have a good quality one that tapers to a point, you can actually make a line with this type of brush too. So it has a lot of uses, and it can, because it's longer bristles, you can load up a good amount of paint on it and paint for a while with it. All right, so that is your flat brush. For this, I would recommend, depending on how large you paint, again, I don't like beginners to paint too small because I think it gets you really tight. I would want you to have one bigger than my finger, maybe a finger's and a half width to 2 fingers width wide for this brush. And next I'm going to show you the Filbert, one of my favorite shapes of all time. I don't know why, I just was really attracted to this shape when I first started painting. I guess I just like the way it handles the paint. Now this is a nice large brush. This is about 2 fingers width. I think everyone beginning should have one brush at least this large, because if you want to lay in a whole background, a lot of color at once, so you're going to go crazy trying to do it with a little itsy little narrow brush. So this is a good size to have. Let me demonstrate that brush stroke. I have a smaller Filbert over here to demonstrate with. And what I love about this is you can get, now let's look at the flat brush stroke. When you have a lot of paint on, you get a little lip or an edge like that. With the Filbert, I find that it doesn't create that much of a lip. So if you want a crisper, cleaner edge, I love the Filbert for that. I just happen to like, this is really personal, and so that's why I want you to have all 4 brushes to start, and you'll find the ones that you're most attracted to. The other thing is that you can use this also up on the point to create a line of sorts. I had it a little too loaded, so that's not really fair to the brush. Let me try it with some red so you can see the line a little better. So, ooh, create a line that way, holding it perpendicular to the canvas, and you can get a line. All right, the last but not least type is the brights. So these are great for creating sort of a short, snappy, springy brush stroke, and that can create extra texture. So I'm going to load up this brush a lot. You got a ton of paint on there, and you can create all kinds of little interesting sort of textures with it. Again, it's also good for creating smoother, flatter areas of color. And it can hold a decent amount of paint too. So those are your 4 basic brush types. I hope that video was helpful, and please leave questions in the comments below. I'll be doing more videos. I try to answer questions with another video so that everyone can benefit from the answer. Another thing I want to tell you is I have a special video on how to clean and care for your brushes. This is really important. So we'll put a link here and you can watch that. In addition, I'd really recommend watching that because a lot of people don't learn how to clean their brushes. I've had some of these brushes in my set. This one, I remember, this is Degas. I don't even know the brand, but I remember it's the Edgar Degas. This is actually an oil painting brush. I have had this at least 30 years. I take really good care of my brushes, and they will last and serve me for a long time, which is why it's worthwhile to invest in good ones, because they can be used for many years with good care. So happy painting.